Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Human trafficking has been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but now there's a new group fighting it in a very unique way. Joining us right now, Jeremy Mahugh. He's with DeliverFund. Jeremy, thank you for coming on the show.
Jeff, thanks again for having me. Appreciate it.
Give us an overview, because I think the way you guys are doing this is very unique in the space. Who are you, and how do you fight human trafficking?
Well, Jeff, thank you. And, when we first started looking at what this problem was, we were thinking that it was something in Thailand or Cambodia, which is maybe a common misconception that that's the only place that human trafficking happens. And we don't think about it happening here in our own neighborhoods and our own communities. So when we started to take a deeper look, we realized that it's both the American dollar and the American male that drive the human trafficking market around the world. So even if we want to fight it around the world, we really need to start looking here first. And I think that's where we started to talk to local law enforcement and see what their problems were, what they were missing, what they were lacking. And we started 6 years ago, and I can tell you I was just continually perplexed at the lack of resources, people, technology that was put towards this. I mean, we didn't put anything towards it. As taxpayers, your money went to fight, really guns, drugs, and terrorism, not what we would call national security. But as a nation, we really hadn't put pressure on our politicians to fund programs to really fight human trafficking, especially here at home. So this is something that has generated a lot of awareness over the last probably 6 years since we've started. It's been a really interesting journey for us, because we started out looking at this problem. We realized we needed to fill some of those gaps for law enforcement, because at the end of the day, it's the job of law enforcement to be able to arrest human traffickers. Just because I was a Navy SEAL sniper doesn't mean I can go out and take care of business on the street here in the United States, right? That's somebody that has a badge and credentials. And so we've got to empower them and then make sure that prosecutors have what they need to be able to get successful prosecutions. And it's also the job of law enforcement to get those rescues. And so how can we help them do their job better? And that's what DeliverFund has been about from the beginning, looking at a scalable, sustainable way to do that. And so we started out doing this, we would call it counter human trafficking intelligence operations. And we started training law enforcement. We started working with different technology companies to be able to build solutions to help them fight this. And what we realized very quickly was we needed to really get our own solutions and our own technology. And so over 6 years, we've been leveraging technology to curate data specific to human trafficking. And now we are actually developing technology that is doing this at scale for commercial industries, where we can essentially red flag human trafficking that's happening within probably 5 industries are the main ones we're looking at right now.
Yes, and you had been telling me off camera that there's some exciting news happening with DeliverFund. Would you share that?
Absolutely. I think that, again, we're in this COVID period where, a lot of, I would say, donors are deciding which foundations or which nonprofits live and die, because funds are very tight and fundraising is always difficult, right? So finding a way to create a revenue source where we have a product that provides a service is a very unique thing for a nonprofit to be able to capture. And this is something we've been working on for quite a few years, but we started with in the banking industry, where we can actually red flag human trafficking that's happening within that industry that already has a regulation stating that they can't have illicit funds in their accounts, right? And there's a should have known clause around that. So how do they defend against that? And what kind of software solutions exist for them to be able to root that out? And what DeliverFund brings to the table is not only a software solution, but also trained intelligence analysts that can build an intelligence report based on looking at these different indicators of what is human trafficking and report that. So banks can then either fill out a suspicious activity report, and if they want, we can supplement that with an intelligence report from us. But that's the gist. But there's really about 5 larger corporation or larger industries that we're looking at, because when you think about the day in a life of a human trafficker, where is that human trafficker going? What is he doing? What industries is he touching? He might put one of his girls on an Uber to go to an appointment. He might rent a hotel room. He might get an airplane ticket. He might put money, either get money from an ATM or put money in a bank account, right? So all of these different things that he's doing within his day touch these different industries that all have a liability to not have that kind of illicit activity in their industry. And so you'll see in the last 12 months, there's been 2 major lawsuits, class action lawsuits. One was it was actually against Facebook. I think it was based out of Houston, where multiple human trafficking victims were in a class action lawsuit saying, hey, I was advertised for sex on your platform. Also, there's 3 major hotel chains that were being sued in a class action lawsuit saying, hey, these victims are saying they were sold on, in your hotel, and you were complicit and knew what was happening. And so these industries have a liability, but they also have a corporate responsibility. And I think there's becoming more awareness wrapped around that. So DeliverFund provides a solution really that does both sides of this. It helps the industry reduce their liability, and at the same time, it roots out human trafficking within those industries. And it does what we have been saying from the beginning, just like counterterrorism, counter human trafficking. What does that mean? That means to block, stop, deny territory. And if we can do that with these human traffickers, we can change behavior, because at the end of the day, even though we're trying to get law enforcement to make good arrests and prosecutors to make good prosecutions, this problem is so big that we can't arrest our way out and we can't prosecute our way out. We need to focus on that, but we also need to have other solutions. And this is a sustainable way that we can stop human traffickers from being able to use all those different industries I mentioned.
Absolutely. I think it becomes a no-brainer for corporate America. We found a great video that's kind of an overview of DeliverFund. Let's go ahead and roll that now.
We support those law enforcement officers who are out there doing the work to try to get those children back and to free them.
The operation runs by finding advertisements for victims online and then utilizing a variety of cyber tools and special operations methodologies. We trace that back and we find the trafficker.
They think that they can evade us, but if they touch the internet, we can find them, and oftentimes do find them. We then take that information that we find, we package it up and we give it to law enforcement. They verify the information that we give them, so then they go get warrants and take action against those guys.
We can go and save the girls, but it's much more rewarding to take out the trafficker, because when you take out the trafficker, you don't only save the girls, you save countless numbers of girls in the future. And training law enforcement to do that is the best way to take out the trafficker.
Our law enforcement, which is typically underfunded, they are under-resourced, they're under-trained, and sometimes they wouldn't know where to go to begin with.
So the state and local guys are actually the ones doing the heavy lifting in the fight against human trafficking, but they don't have any of the resources to be able to go after it as effectively as the feds.
So that's where DeliverFund comes in to really fill that gap for law enforcement. and aid them so that we can enable them for success.
Well, why is this not an issue that the public cares about? It is a massive problem, and it's one that we need to start taking seriously by putting resources behind it and by actually supporting the law enforcement officers who are going after the central nexus of the problem, which is the existence of a human trafficker. You cannot have a human trafficking victim if you do not have a human trafficker. So removing the human trafficker from the equation is where we should be focusing all of our resources.
Jeremy, I liken it to almost like a dream team of superheroes. I mean, each one of you brings some information technology experience that a typical police officer just doesn't have.
So yes and no. I would say like we come from the NSA, the CIA, federal tier 1 places. But at the end of the day, we're still having to create a solution kind of based on those methodologies and those technologies, but creating a solution that works specifically here in the United States. And so we're continuing to innovate around that all the time. And we've just been very blessed with, again, like top minds, top talent to be able to figure out on the, whether it's machine learning, whether it's just the, AI side of things to create these solutions.
Outstanding. Well, we've got a video of one of the survivors that you helped free from human trafficking. Let's go ahead and roll that.
Because they sweet talk, like that's what the whole Romeo pimp's about. They'll sweet talk you. They'll make you think that like you're doing it because you love them. Like if you love them, you'll do that. But some guys are like, oh, if you love me, you'll have sex with me. No, this one's like, if you love me, you'll go sell your body for me. And then they take all your money. They're supposed to take care of you, but it's all a form of control. When I first started working, I would have breakdowns in the middle of a session. I couldn't do it. Till finally, I kind of just separated me and who I am when I'm working. Otherwise, I would go crazy. I would lose it. You numb your mind. The thing about heroin is, at a certain point, you'll do whatever it takes to get it. You need it. They get you where you're dependent on them for it. So you need them to survive, basically. I remember one time I was just outside smoking a cigarette and someone asked me for a lighter and he had somebody watching me. I got beat for that later, and it was just because someone asked me to use my lighter. Because I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody. When we went out, I had to tell him my order to tell the waiter. I couldn't look at anybody. I had to look at him or the ground. And if you messed up in public, then you were gonna get beat as soon as you got back to the room. And he'd make sure nobody heard. He'd turn up the TV and turn on the shower. And if you cried or screamed or anything, then he would take you out of the room, and you never knew if death was gonna be an option. Never knew. It's an epidemic. It's an underground epidemic that nobody has any idea about. Because when they see an escort or a prostitute, all they think is a drug-addicted whore that lives on the street. They don't think about the story behind it. They don't think about, is she being forced to do this? Does she have to do this? Is she getting beat if she doesn't do this? If I could wave a magic wand to solve this problem, it would just to have all the people that used to turn their heads away from the girls that are on the street corners or on the websites. It's for them to reach out, to look, to open their eyes to see us, instead of turn the other way.
just heartbreaking stories, but stories of hope. And some of these young ladies that you freed from human trafficking, I can only imagine, I mean, it's changed their life forever, hasn't it, Jeremy?
So in that instance of the girl that we just watched, who we call Samantha, it was about 5 years later. That was one of the first cases that we worked on. And 5 years later, lo and behold, she's the guest speaker at the human trafficking conference in New Mexico. So now she has her life back. I mean, it took her years to get off heroin and get through programs multiple times, but she has a child, she's engaged, she has a very optimistic future, and she's helping other survivors of human trafficking. And that's the story of hope right there, I think.
Absolutely. And just as we end the segment, let's talk a little bit about the resources that police have. I mean, they were already strapped before all the protests and the calls for defunding police departments. I understand that there's just lots of officers retiring. They're more short-staffed than they've ever been. So organizations like DeliverFund really become critical to their success. Isn't that true, Jeremy?
I think that's the profound statement of the day, right? I mean, we're unfortunately looking at all of these people who want to defund the police, which is the thing that keeps us safe, keeps our communities safe. And so, especially at a time like this, we need to have solutions to augment them, help them do what it is they need to do, and make it easy for them to be able to do that. And that's where DeliverFund does come in. The same technologies that we're fighting human trafficking in these other industries are the same technologies that we're tying law enforcement into to be able to really lock down this net across the country so that human traffickers just cannot move and cannot do business. And if they try to, we see where they are, and we make it so easy for police, and we give police all the data so that, you know, we have 100% conviction rate, because it's very binary, like you either did or you didn't do this.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by your story. Thank you for your mission and your ministry and what you're doing. We're going to end with the website. DeliverFund.org is the website. We've got it on the screen. Please get a hold of Jeremy and his amazing team. They need your donations now. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.